side.
So yeah, I have multiple 20-ton jacks. Because you know that building that we just bought, we had to jack it up. Of course.
Give it a few more. Give it another minute and a half, or everybody
Hi,
wants.
Mr. Purdock.
Or John Philip Harris. How are you, sir?
My refrigerator died.
We have it afterwards.
Your refrigerator's running. No, so well, we went to the store to get a new one, right? And then of course my wife wants all new appliances, so we replaced the whole kitchen.
What'd you get?
Whirlpool.
25.
My modern kitchen, man.
You guys ready?
Yeah.
15 seconds. Gonna be right on the dot.
Whatever makes your socks go up and down.
That's
Mayor.
what makes them go up and down. Turn your microphone on.
I'm not ready to say anything yet.
Don't forget to turn it on.
This guy.
Meeting will come to order. Madam Clerk, could you call a roll?
Councilmember Purdock.
Here.
Councilmember Overton. Here. Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Vice Mayor Slutin.
Here.
And Mayor Kramer.
Here. Okay, can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Councilmember Overton, would you lead us, please? I
pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is Mr. Hoyt here? So, would anyone else like to lead the invocation? Councilmember Purdock, well, there, you're smiling.
You want me to say something?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll do it.
You do it.
Our Father, we're grateful for the opportunity to be here as city officials and as staff and as members of the public. We ask a blessing upon us that we can lead the city well and that we can follow thy guidance and do thy work here. We're grateful for this great city, grateful for all the wonderful things happening here, and pray that we continue to push it forward with thy help. And we say this in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. May be seated.
Second counselor or something?
Good job, Mr. Jones. That thing. Okay. Get to the right page. Adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes or alterations to the agenda?
No changes, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Somebody.
Make a motion to accept the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Purdock and seconded by Councilmember Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? None. Motion passes. Time for public comments, and we have one request for public comments from Lisa Wilson. Lisa, can you end up on a subject to Shakespeare at the Lake?
Good evening. My name is Lisa Wilson. I'm a business owner and a citizen here of the city of Clearlake. Shakespeare is coming to Clearlake. A free live production of the comedy, The Taming of the Shrew, will be performed at Austin Park the first weekend of August. Shakespeare at the Lake has had a successful 3-year run at Library Park in Lakeport and has accepted an invitation to expand to Austin Park and the city of Clearlake this year. Clearlake Chamber of Commerce and the City of Clearlake are partnering with Mendocino College Lake Center, Lake County Theater Company, and the Lake County Friends of Mendocino College to bring live theater across the lake. This is a high-quality production with staging, costumes, lighting, and sound. Have you heard of Asheville in Oregon, or Bend, Oregon, and the theater productions up there? So we have a lot of similarities. They're a small, rural, beautiful community, and they have high-quality, high-culture theater productions there. John Tomlinson, who's the director of Shakespeare at the Lake, shared his vision with the judges' breakfast this morning, and his vision is to have 4 weekends of live Shakespeare performance free to our community all around the lake. And this expansion from Lakeport to Clearlake is a huge step in that direction. Our sense of community and pride of place will grow by sharing in such an exciting and accessible experience. Each summer, we will look forward to another great Shakespeare event. I'm the city manager, Alan Flora, Police Chief Andrew White, and Fire Chief Willie Cepeda and their teams have been thought partners from the beginning. The city has provided staff support, storage at City Hall, green room for the crew, public restrooms, and upgraded power source across the street at Austin Park. The city is also providing trash cans and removal. This is very similar to what Lakeport has been providing for 3 years in the history of the production so far. I invite the City of Clearlake to become a financial sponsor also for this inaugural performance of Shakespeare at the Lake. Such a sponsorship fits with our desire for increased economic development and community projects. Here's your chance to become royalty at a $1,500 level, which pencils out to about $1.50 for each person attending. I've left you with our little handbills and with a sponsorship form. And I know that you can't respond to me here, but I hope you will consider this financial donation in addition to the in-kind support that you're offering for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Are there any other comments?
I want to team in behind Lisa, Cheryl Alman, also in Clear Lake. The donations can also be individuals out there. If you're going to bring your family, you also can be a sponsor. So go ahead and talk with the chamber as well as with Lisa and make that donation, as well as all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ullman. Mr. Silva?
Ray Silva, Clear Lake. I'd like to take this opportunity after what's it been 3 years since we started talking about getting the roads done in Highlands Harbor. It's been at least a few election cycles, but you know, you read on MSN about the poorest county in the state, poorest city in the state, the unhealthiest city in the state. I can tell you now that since the roads in the harbor have been done, the traffic, the foot traffic, older people walking the streets, riding their bikes, kids running up and down the street is increased tenfold. So a simple thing like fixing the roads is going to make the community healthier and happier. And I think I can speak for all the people in Highlands Harbor to say that not only was the contractor polite and accommodative, and the crew was really, really good. They did their best to not upset the apple cart with people getting in and out. They made it easy. City staff did a great job. Overall, you've made a lot of people happy. And I understand what you're going to be talking about tonight, and I'll wait till that time, is about the Meadowbrook area. I just want to thank council for getting this done and say we really appreciate it. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. It's always nice, you know, we get criticisms. It's nice to get compliments at times, so thank you.
I'll have criticism for you later.
I'm sure you will.
Thanks.
Mr. Sabatier. Supervisor Sabatier, excuse me.
So I'm going to attempt to do something I've been meaning to do, and I'm finally going to do. I want to give you a quick county update, and hopefully quick means within 3 minutes. So one of the things that we're working on, same as you, is we're working on figuring out how to deal with the power shutoffs. We've already installed a generator to allow for the entire courthouse to continue its operations, and we're now going out to bid with the new consensus from the board this week, going out to bid to get the price for 5 more generators to keep offices powered up, such as social services, behavioral health, and animal control. And I think animal control is one of those that I'm not sure if we've heard the council speaking about if the power shuts down. I know in the past there's been a lot of complaints about how hot it gets in there, and I know we've worked hard to get the HVAC in there, and so something to think about as we start dealing with the PSPS. The county is also attempting to do something that I haven't heard this council talking about, which is allowing hemp to grow simultaneously as cannabis without making any kind of rules or regulations, or without saying no, then you follow the rules of the federal government so far, because California has not set any rules. That means it can be grown right next to schools, it can be grown right next to churches, and all you need is a minimum of 0.1 acres in order to legally be allowed to grow it. And I know that because it looks just like cannabis, sometimes it can smell just like cannabis. Just wanted to bring this up to your attention, that maybe that is something that you want to put some slight regulations on if you want it here, since I know we had some of those conversations about odor and things like that when we were talking about cannabis. Also on the subject of cannabis, there have been some changes. It used to be that you could not grow in the county adjacent to city jurisdiction. Now you can, as long as you get the approval from the city. So for instance, right now I'm working with a cannabis grower who wants to grow outside of the city jurisdiction, just outside of Aguilan Canyon, which seems to coincide with where the city has also approved to allow cannabis. So I'm working with him to bring the summary of his project to the city to see if the city would give the approval or not. But I think that's a good way to do it, to have the city know what kind of projects are happening in its surrounding areas. Also, something that I think is really important is not too long ago, the county chair, Tina Scott, organized a new ad hoc committee, which is made up of Supervisor Simon and myself, both representatives of the city of Clearlake, and to work with the tax collector slash treasurer to meet expectations for that department. And once actions have been taken, we will bring those back to the public and to yourselves to let you know what we're working on. We know it's really important that we have our default property taxes auctioned, and that we have everything collected so that we can make sure you get the right amount of property taxes, our schools get the right amount of property taxes, fire districts, and so on. It's really important. Also, I feel since my transition from the city to the county, I feel like it's gone extremely well for keeping my relationships with the council, with staff, with Chief White and City Manager Flora. Don't want to swap their positions there. I'm actually currently working with Mayor Kramer and Vice Mayor Slutin on housing projects. I know that was one of your goals with your new budget, and I wanted to make sure and tag along to see where I can help with that. And I'm also currently working with Councilmember Overton on bringing a mural over to our city, and I'm waiting with anticipation to get that completed, and I've also had conversations with Councilmember Harris about that as well. So please feel free anytime, let me know what your needs are, because I may not always know what your needs are. My focus has become a lot more broad, bigger picture, and so you can help bring my feet back on the ground and let me know what work I need to do to make sure that Clearlake is free to move in the direction that it's been moving, because that's what I want to do, is I want to help you keep moving in that direction. So just wanted to give you a quick county update. Thank you very much for the work that you do.
Thank you, Supervisor Sabatier. Okay, now if I can get our Lakeshore Lions members to step up towards the podium. We have a little... This is in recognition of last weekend's Redbud Parade and Carnival and 4th of July fireworks presentation that is sponsored every year by the Lions Club. I'll read our certificate of recognition. Certificate of Recognition, Lakeshore Lions Club, in recognition of the 62nd Annual Redbud Parade and 4th of July celebration, presented in gratitude of your generosity and dedicated service and support of our community. The City Council of the City of Clearlake extends a thank you in honor of your commitment to our city and its citizens, dated this 11th day of July 2019, signed by myself as mayor. So I'll present this to you.
Awesome job. Awesome.
Absolutely, say something.
All right, so Honorable Mayor,
On Sunday. Moving.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. And the fire was the best in the county, you know that. I think Jeff Smith told me there were 400 and something, 70 things going up in the air, so it was absolutely awesome.
Counted them all?
Yeah, he did. At least that's what he said.
I'd like to thank the city council and city manager, our police chief and city clerk, all the city people in public works. I mean, without your help and dedication to what we do, it would never happen. So you guys really support us, and we need that. So thank you very much.
Great job. Great job, you guys.
We'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there anybody who would like to pull anything from the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Sorry, I had a motion to approve it.
In a second.
And a second motion by Vice Mayor Slotin, second by Council Member Overton. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes, motion passes. Okay. Moving on to the business. We'll open the public hearing for item number 6, purchase of Taser 7 devices and training for the police department. I'm assuming that Chief White will be presenting that, or should I not assume that?
Well, yeah, Chief White will be presenting this item.
I'm sorry.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. As you know, the police department equips officers with tasers, which are designed to control violent or potentially violent individuals while minimizing the risk of injury to both the officers and the suspects or subjects that are targeted with the device. Unfortunately, our devices are beyond their service life. This was brought up during the budget approval process, and we had appropriated funding to replace the devices. Unfortunately, as is the case with technology, the technology is rapidly changing, and the new device that they just released, unfortunately, is greater than the amount that we had appropriated. The good news is that the new devices
essentially the program has changed to where it's a full wraparound service. So it includes all the cartridges that are required for the training process. It includes an entirely new training program, and it also includes a new virtual reality de-escalation training program. By way of background, according to Axon, which is a manufacturer, approximately 7 to 10% of police encounters involve mentally ill subjects, and 25 to 50% of all fatal police shootings involve subjects with untreated severe mental illness. The virtual reality training program includes modules that will support de-escalation curriculum, and they were developed with the law enforcement, crisis intervention, and mental health experts. The differential between what we had appropriated and what we were asking for is $7,704.42. The program is over 5 years, so the annual cost is that amount across the 5 years, which comes out to $88,522.10. We are getting a trade-in credit, which wasn't originally anticipated, for $5,000.40 for our old units. So at this time, we're recommending that you waive the competitive bidding process and approve us to enter into the 5-year agreement with Axon to purchase the certification plan for 24 users, which is our full-time sworn count. We would also ask for additional approval to allow us to modify it if we come into new positions that we decide need that, and that would be with the approval of the city manager. And finally, to approve using a fund balance in Measure P to cover the unforeseen additional expense. And if you'd like, I have a short video. It's a couple minutes long that gives you a perspective of the de-escalation training. I would tell you that somebody's gone through a lot of different police training. I believe that this kind of stuff is the future. One of the things when you teach de-escalation to people is when you're dealing with individuals who have mental illness and so forth, is understanding what their perspective is, not just the tactical response to it. And this, you'll see from the video, actually puts you firsthand in kind of a simulated environment of what are they seeing when the officers come up, they're giving commands and everything else, and it helps the officer to better understand what's happening. And unfortunately, with changes in funding and everything else, officers more and more are being put on the front lines as the first responders and kind of field level clinicians dealing with individuals in crisis. So I believe that anything that we can do to make these encounters less risky for the officers and the public is warranted. Just by way of numbers, the amount of money, if you take the $17,000 or so per year, we have approximately 15 uses of the taser device per year. Comes out to about $1,100. In my opinion, looking at the cost of litigation and everything else, in some of these cases it could have been resolved differently, that it's a very low cost when it comes to saving lives and protecting individuals. And I'd be happy to answer any questions while I queue up the video here. Is the sound up on there?
I can disconnect it. I won't let them get in my head anymore. I can't just unplug the cable box. I need to unscrew the connection. I'm not stupid. I need to unscrew the connection. I need a screwdriver. You just have to find it. You always lose. Loser. Lost. 4,000 satellites in space. No one knows about it. Listen. Listen. You don't listen. 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 You don't listen. Listen. Maybe they don't know. The FBI makes YouTube take it down. They take the video down. They always take the video down, and someone always puts it up again. You just have to find it. You always lose. Loser. Lost. Listen to me! Listen. I need to know. Who sent you here? Maybe they don't know. Who sent you here? Why are you here? Are you working for them?
So this is just going to show you, that was from the perspective of the person being contacted, so now it flips over to the officer's perspective.
We have a mother calling for help. She says her son is schizophrenic and currently on his meds.
Hey, you got the lights
Officer Morgan. Okay, it's my partner, Officer Diaz. Hey, partner, he's got a screwdriver. He's holding a screwdriver in his hand. He's got a screwdriver.
So in the interest of time, I'll just stop it there. But essentially the way that this works, they put on the virtual reality goggles and they actually see this so they can look around in the video vignette that they're watching. And then they can actually make decisions that will change the outcome of the encounter. So it's an opportunity to learn. The program's designed that they can do these sorts of things at briefing, et cetera, and do it over short periods of time instead of assembling everybody to go to a class for several hours and so forth. During the lifetime of this agreement, they'll continue to add on different scenarios. There's a scenario regarding an autistic child with a shoplifting scenario and a bunch of different things. So these particular things, although they're tied into the taser device, the outcome isn't to see, can they target the taser device at the person? It's actually looking at alternatives that may eliminate using any device, or, if they need to resort to some sort of control device or whatnot. So it gives them different options. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any lingering questions.
Chief White, could you clarify, to your knowledge, what other agencies within the region are currently using this type of technology?
Yeah, so we would be one of the early adopters of the technology. I believe Chicago Police has deployed this technology. They're in the process of pushing this out, but I think we'd be kind of on the leading edge within our region and really, within the law enforcement arena of taking this technology on board.
I'll open it up now to public comment, questions.
Again, is this something that they'll be able to initially review it as training, but also after they've had an incident to come back and review it again? Is this training that something you will own that you could, as an officer, if I were there, I could go back and review it again and again if I thought I needed to reset that in my brain?
So they could do the scenarios at any time. The scenarios are pre-created by the vendor. We are looking at a different but related system where we could actually set up scenarios based upon our local jurisdiction and have officers walk through decision-making process, but it doesn't actually capture, when an incident happens. That'd be captured on their body camera, et cetera.
Right. But so when you do this training, this is not training you have in your computer for an ongoing time frame?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I misunderstood maybe your question. Yes, we would have the device here and we can deliver the training at any time. And if somebody went to a scenario and they go, hey, I want to go back and redo that again, they absolutely could. And it's basically just put it on, run the program. It's very simple, lightweight.
Good, thank you.
Any more public comment or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to council. Councilwoman Member Overton?
Yeah, on the tasers, are they able to be set at different levels of tasing, or are they just straight, because I'm just curious, because a bigger person might take more than somebody small. So is there different levels they can set it at? Or is it just a straight tase? You got it.
Yeah, correct. There's no, there's not like a programmable levels within it.
So there's no switching to switch it down to a certain level?
No, there's different ways that it can be deployed, especially with this new version, but you don't change it by the levels.
So, so the charge is going to be the same no matter what size the person is, whether it's a child, a teenager, or a big adult?
Well, we wouldn't use it on the young person like that in that scenario, but in terms of if you're dealing with a person that's, 6'6" and 350 pounds versus somebody that's, 5 foot and 100 pounds,
right.
It delivers the same level of charge. The control is basically that they can stop it. So during a cycle, if they gain compliance, they can stop the cycle.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Chief White, how many different modules come with this program?
I was trying to find out because it's so new. A lot of their documentation isn't fully out there, but it looked like there was at least 3 or 4 right now, and they said they're in the process of developing more.
And it looked like they're targeting mental illness or mental conditions, but I guess my concern would be if they were to have scenarios that involve specific drug use like crystal meth.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they've hit that. I know right now it's looking at the de-escalation in these types of scenarios, but obviously as being an early adopter, I think we would have options to provide input on it.
Right. I just think that it's fantastic. The mental illness issue obviously greatly affects our community, but I think the drug use, the illicit drug use, is probably even more prevalent here. But it would be interesting to see how this thing unfolds. And as it unfolds, is there going to be cost to upgrade modules? So if what's the length of this? Is 5 years?
Correct.
So in 5 years, within the 5-year time frame, if they say, "Oh, we released 4 more modules," do we have to upgrade our ability to have access to those modules?
No, they've indicated that during the life of the agreement, we would have full access. So we have their flagship subscription plan. So training, everything else, equipment breaks, any of that sort of stuff, it's all included within that.
Thank you. And will there be somebody that comes on site to does the jump off?
So one of the things that we worked out in the agreement is that they'll provide us a certificate so that we can go to an instructor course, and then that person will bring back the training here and deliver it. And a lot of it's web-based, so there's a component, I believe it's a 4-hour component that the officers do on their own time, in the patrol car or whatever else with a computer, and then they'll come to the class that's put on by one of our instructors, and they'll be able to teach it.
And do the modules run in-house, or do they run via the internet from the hub center, whatever this?
I believe it comes from their internet site. I'm not entirely sure because, again, a lot of the documentation it's very slim.
And we'd be able to accommodate that now with the new internet?
Yes.
The speeds necessary for something like that, because I know that requires a large amount of speed. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? I just have the one, just to assure ourselves on the budget. I know these are a little bit more expensive than what you were thinking earlier. We have enough room to comfortably carry that added expense.
Yeah, it's a small additional expense. I mean, we did, as we always do, look and see, what other options were available. There's not really other vendors out there that provide this type of tool. And then, there is also the option of what we had been doing previously, which was just purchasing the tasers outright. But Chief White could probably recall the details better than me. There wasn't much of a cost difference, and it doesn't include the full wraparound program. Like if they're, the module, or not the module, well, it doesn't include any of the virtual reality modules, but also the taser capsules or whatever you call them. I think we would have to purchase them separately, the cartridges, exactly, and so forth. And so, we don't feel like that it makes sense to go with that because, the value of the virtual reality piece, it's pretty hard to put a number on that, I believe.
Okay. And again, Chief White, you'll be getting enough of these for each of your officers plus code enforcement officers, I'm hearing, I understand?
So the sworn personnel would get these. The code enforcement personnel and animal control, we would continue to use the older model, the X2, because their usage scenarios are completely different than a police officer, whereas we have them to, control and effect arrests and that sort of thing. Theirs are purely as a defensive device. So the cost benefit, it didn't justify not only for the devices, but the type of training is just completely different.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Purdock, did you have a question?
I didn't have a question, just a comment, and I'm ready to make the motion.
All right, are there any other comments first? Okay, I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Taser is an excellent product, and it's a great use of force continuum tool. So in light of that, I would like to offer resolution number 201932, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clearlake authorizing the Chief of Police to enter into an agreement with Axon Enterprises, Inc. for the purchase of taser devices as submitted by the Chief of Police.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Purdock and a second by Councilmember Harris. Do we need a roll call on that, or is that just majority?
A voice vote will be fine, Mayor.
Pardon me?
Majority vote will be
Okay.
fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Seeing the motion passage unanimously. Okay, moving on to item 7, gravel roads and chip seal project. City Manager Flora, I'm not going to bypass you this time.
City Engineer Schwartz will present this item.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Back in April, we started kind of planning our attack on utilizing Measure B funds to do the vast amount of road grading that's necessary throughout the city. We started up in the avenues with one of the crews, and another crew started in the tree streets, I believe. I've been working pretty closely to understand the operations, the opportunities and constraints with Superintendent Baker, and he and I weekly go visit the sites to see what challenges he faces, the crew faces, what's prohibiting from getting more street miles done, so on and so forth. One of the things that we are noticing with the earlier graded streets is that they're already starting to degrade a bit, and once they start degrading after the road grading occurs, that becomes fairly accelerated. So, it seems like we're in this cycle about, are we going to be grading roads the rest of our lives, or can we do something that's more long-term? We just started asking ourselves some questions around what other solutions could we consider to start minimizing the revisiting of roads that would be cost-effective. And what we came up with was maybe a test project, which would be like a double chip seal over the top of the gravel roads, which would provide a much longer lifespan, 5+ years. We're estimating a 6-year lifespan. So we did some analyses looking at the manpower, staff, fuel, equipment cost of what the city is currently spending per mile to grade the roads, and we came up with a round number of about $10,000 a mile is what it's costing the city to grade roads currently. And best case scenario of that is you're probably getting about 6 months of real useful life off of that operation. If you were to normalize that and get a full year out of that, you'd be $20,000 a mile. So we tried to normalize it and then compare it to what the cost might be as compared to a 24-foot wide double chip seal. We called several contractors and got some estimates from them based on public works type projects. And we came up with what we feel would be, again, it can only be confirmed through actual bidding, but we figured about $70,000 a mile to double chip seal the gravel roads. I brought this to City Manager Flora. He thought it was a worthwhile endeavor to bring forth to you. If we look at the cost and the cost benefits of chip sealing versus the roadway grading, 6 years of chip sealing, using a 6-year lifespan, you spend about $70,000. And for 6 years of roadway grading, if you were to normalize the actual benefit, which means you'd have to grade those roads twice a year, would cost you about $120,000. However, the reality is from a cash flow basis, you're probably going to spend $60,000 a mile, so about $10,000 per mile less. That's assuming in today's figures. The difficulty with that is in 6 years, your labor cost, your fuel cost, your equipment costs are probably going to go up. So that's probably a best case scenario. So City Manager Flora and I kind of talked about, we thought it would be worthwhile to look at some areas that would be available that we think would hold a chip seal. And we came up with a project which I included a map. Basically, I wanted to concentrate it in an area an area that we feel has very good base material, an area that has good drainage, which are that area of the avenues. I just called it the Southwest Avenues, and it's Oak Avenue and Eureka Avenue, and then grading the cross streets of 19th through 22nd Avenue. That area adds up to about a mile, and we thought it'd be worth a try to bring it to, or at least see how you feel, if you wanted to pursue something that might be a bit longer term, and to do a test project out there. With that, I would entertain any questions and direction you might have.
I'll open this up to public questions and comments first. Any? Yes, Supervisor Sabatier.
Bruno Sabatier, City of Clearlake. I'm going to quote Ray Silva, who's sitting behind me, when we originally spoke about Measure V, when he asked about the dirt roads, and if we're spending $500,000 a year, which was the original estimate that it would cost us to grade all the roads, that 10 years from now, after spending $5 million or $500,000 or $5 million, excuse me, that we would just have dirt roads. So this is exciting to at least take a look at how we can slowly change something and see what the full effects are. I didn't quite capture the full math on that, because you said $10,000 and then you doubled that for the full year, because you said it was $10,000 for 6 months and then $20,000 for a full year. And so if we're doing 6 years, that'd be $120,000.
That's correct, and that's what I have, is be 120. So for 6 years of a roadway grading, normalized for equal benefit, you'd be about $120,000.
In comparison to the $70,000.
In comparison to the 70, but that's an equal benefit, but in reality, the city actually wouldn't spend that out of pocket.
Right.
Because we aren't able to grade them twice a year, basically.
Right. And I think that there's some other things on top of that as well. When you start increasing the quality of a community or a neighborhood, the prices of properties go up, and everything else, quality of life goes up. People aren't complaining as much. You have less requests for service that you receive, where you can now focus exactly on where the work should be done. And I think there's some domino effects to making those types of changes. I do have one question. There was a lot of talk about something, and it disappeared, and I'm not sure if it doesn't work or if we've just forgotten about it, and that was permazine. I know that our dirt roads are really easily falling apart whenever it rains. The cars go through, and it destroys the hard work that we put into it. Is permazine not a possible solution any longer? I thought that was supposed to try and hold the dirt a little bit more together. But thank you very much for talking about this. It's exciting.
I can address your question with regards to permazine. Is that okay? Yeah. We looked at the permazine. I've talked to Public Works Superintendent Baker, who was involved with the permazine quite a bit over the last 2 years, and it doesn't hold up through the winter, quite frankly. And when you look at the roadway grading comparisons between what was applied to permazine and what was not applied to permazine, 1 year later you can't see a difference, number one. Number two, it really inhibits, your cost per mile goes up substantially because you've got all the mixing operations that go along with it. And so you really, your cost per mile just goes up tremendously as well.
Mr. Mayor, before we move on, if I could add one more thing, and we did talk about this with the council earlier in the season, but one thing that we started doing this year that hadn't been done in the past was actually using more gravel road base as part of the mix, which hadn't been done before, and just kind of didn't see the results from the permazine, so we're looking and trying other things to see what kind of results we can get.
Okay, was that, I'm not ignoring you, was that the roads that you looked at, did they have that more gravel added to it and still started showing washboarding?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Silva.
I know there was a significant amount of money spent to mix and blend that material up at the airport. Has that made any difference as far as putting it down on the roads? Is it staying better?
The material that's been up at the airport is leftover grindings from when we grind the roads. They're not using that. It doesn't work that well. We're actually purchasing actual base rock. That material doesn't have enough fines. So what you have is material that just doesn't hold. We're currently using that material in the new machine that was bought to repair potholes, and we're reheating that, making it back into asphalt and using it on pothole repair.
This test area that you're going to do, the Oak and Eureka 19th, is this going to be design engineered, or I heard you mention that the roads had pretty good drainage in that area, which is one of the problems with roads staying, is that if the drainage isn't addressed prior to surfacing a road in any way, shape, or form, it's not going to stay. So is this a design project that'll go out to bid as a chip seal project?
Yes. Yes. Now, we didn't do any drainage design. We purposely didn't do that just because that increases the soft cost, or the engineering cost. So I'm out there on a weekly basis, if not more, with the Public Works Superintendent. We purposely chose an area that already has drainage, that where the chip seal would hold and have the best chance of holding. We're not planning on putting in any culverts or underground pipe or anything like that in this particular test area. Some of the drainage areas that you're referring to, those are much, much larger projects.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mrs. Duke.
Patty Duke talking here. It is exciting. So I've seen this road tax shot down, I think more than once, voted down because people were so despondent that anything would ever be done. And going to some of my clients out in the outback, over there in the avenues, and out in the outback, over there in the streets. I mean, sometimes I'm driving like this because I got a car. I don't have a 4x4. And my question is it ever going to extend to those areas so it's easier to access these people's residences besides the main roads? That's my question.
Well, the grading, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, that would be a question for the council, but the idea here is to do a test project and see if this works and is a feasible solution to expand
Yeah,
into
that's
other
for the
areas.
client, I mean, not my clients too, but for the citizens, people that live here, to have this projection to the future that they may be able to access their residences in a more normal way. So anyway, it's exciting that it's starting, pretty much, and it was voted in. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I'll bring it back to council. I'm not sure whether Councilwoman Overton is first.
Okay, so on Eureka, they did a test thing there back a few years ago, per se with what Bruno was, I think, saying. They tried some stuff there. My daughter happened to live on the street at the time, and it really washed away. Didn't hardly last any time at all. So I agree we need to do something different, because I think they used that before as a test, a little test area, and the product that they used failed. It literally did not last a month. Maybe when the rain started, it was kind of gone. So, yeah. But Eureka is kind of I mean, I know it has that drainage and they use it for the test thing, but it has that great big huge gully, everybody gets stuck in, the police end up wrecking there, and, I think they've learned not to do that anymore, but they used to fly off there and, we used to pull them out, so is that gonna be through that whole thing, or are you just doing sections, like the one end and then the other end, or is there just a certain section you're gonna do on that?
Yeah, we're not going to attempt to go through the gully. I don't think the chip seal would. We're going to probably, currently we're looking at starting at 18th and stopping at 24th on Eureka. And the gully is 25th, 26th, 27th.
Right, yeah, something that way. Okay, because that's what I was curious, is there's no way to go through that whole thing, so, okay.
Vice Mayor Sloden?
Yeah, question. So I imagine that after we do the chip seal and after 6 years, would it be at the same status as it would be before we started with the chip seal? Or there'd probably be some residue of that stuff, of the chip seal there, so it would be easier to redo it, I assume?
Absolutely. It's just.
So the second time around, it would be,
Absolutely.
so you could almost do a longer lifespan after that? Okay. I'm all in favor of getting a test project going.
Councilmember Harris.
So my experience with the chip seal, I mean, this was brought up when we were talking Measure V discussions initially. Chip seal was brought up a couple of times, but it was thought to be cost prohibitive. But in my experience with chip seal, I lived in Spring Valley for many, many years, and chip seal was the primary road surface going out to New Long Valley Road, and that is a heavily trafficked road, and it would be chip sealed, I want to say, every 10 or 15 years, and it held up very well, I mean, for as much traffic as you see. Now, I would say, when we're looking at this test subject, we have these roads we're seeing here, the limited amount of traffic you're going to see on these roadways. I'm just going to speculate, don't hold me to this, but I'm going to speculate we're going to see almost double the 6 years that you're anticipating. So the unique part is, once you go back and chip seal over it again, we almost have a formidable paved road at that point. That's pretty solid. It comes together and it becomes a very, very solid surface. So that's what I really like about chip seals. It's kind of like a transitional phase into being a solid surface. Now, one thing I would bring up about this is that I would suggest, however, because of the type of road surface we're looking at here, is contacting the utilities in the area, and again, working towards the moratorium concept, because even though it's not a paved road, it's still going to be a formidable road surface that we anticipate utilizing for the next 6 to 10 years. We don't want them coming in right behind us and cutting it open and creating a penetration, or what I would call a purchase point for water. As soon as we have water infiltration, now we have the problems again. So if we can keep that road surface, the tarmac solid, we're good to go. Secondary to that, the Permazyme, unless I'm mistaken, the way it was explained to me is that our test subject for the Permazyme application was the roadway of the property we purchased going up from Ogulin Canyon to the top. And that's where we did our test run with Permazyme. And it held up really, really well because there was zero traffic on that road. And I think that we may have done a very poor test run, because we probably should have chose a roadway that had traffic, because that's probably a primary concern for degradation of a road surface. But yeah, so that road, to this day, if you drive up it, it still looks very nice because nobody drives up it. And I think that that's where we were kind of misled by the Permazyme product, because it's really holding together, and it still is, because it just doesn't have any traffic.
Stop driving on it, Phil.
Right, I know. I'll stay off. So anyways, that just to kind of give a feedback on the Permazyme and what was the excitement behind the Permazyme is that the way I understood it is that driveway up there, we said, wow, if it looks this great still, then we're going to be good. But there may have been other testing, I don't know.
There was, and they didn't work out at all.
Councilmember Burdock, you didn't have a question?
No, it seemed pretty straightforward.
Okay. Ms. Duke, the item tonight was just about this chip seal project, not about all of what we're doing with Measure V funds. Certainly, we're looking to go forward and improve more and more roads as we go. It's just, it took 40 years to get this way. It's not going to change overnight. So, having said that, what do we just need a consensus of
Go for it.
direction? I would say we were all go for it. I'll go for it.
I'm in agreement with the caveat of contacting the local utilities and making sure they're not going to come chopping in behind us. That's my only concern.
Councilman Harris, I was in the office of Canocti Water District this morning.
Solid. Thank you so much.
I have another caveat. Chief, once it gets nice, could we get extra patrol up there? Because people seem to drive a little faster when the roads are nicer.
That's true.
Oh, wait. Oh, one more thing. Are we going to throw some speed bumps in here?
Absolutely.
I was seriously considering it.
Yeah, I mean, this is how much
If
better
it's
of
a
an
test.
opportunity could we do it with our speed tables than right now, right here? This is perfect.
Especially on Eureka, that is definitely the pass-through for everybody that's running from the police. Guarantee you, that is the number one street they all go down.
That's what I used to do.
Yeah, they all do. That's right.
Okay.
Okay, so with
We-
your direction, we will go through bid process and bring back a contract for your approval.
That sounds great. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz, for your report. Moving on to item 8, which I'm assuming is why Mr. Silva is still here. Highlands Harbor Drive and Harbor Lane update. So I'll look for a report. Mr. Flora?
Yes, Mr. Schwartz will also present this.
Mayor, members of the council, I just wanted to provide you kind of a report as we have now completed the Highlands Harbor, Harbor Lane, Anchor Drive, Marina Court, and Lakeland Drive project. We feel it was a pretty good success. We received a lot of positive feedback out there via the construction inspectors, namely Gene and Rich, from the residents who lived out there. And I just thought it'd be nice to kind of tidy it up and kind of give you kind of a before and after and kind of talk through kind of some of what we considered. The goal here is number one, to do it right so that it lasts. Number two is to cover as many square feet of paving surface as economically as possible and still do it right and not sacrifice integrity. So what we implemented is kind of a three-pronged approach to the Highlands Harbor project. I'll just paraphrase it without going through the other streets. And that is we looked at pavement grinding and overlay for the most severe areas, the most dilapidated areas that just couldn't hold anything else. Areas that had some major potholing, but majority of the paving surface we could do something with. We performed dig outs on those areas, and then we did a double microsurfacing over those areas. We call it a type 2, type 3 microsurface over those areas. And then of course the areas that like you're looking at on Harbor, that's at the end of the Court of Harbor Lane. That's actually doesn't look bad, but on Highlands Harbor Drive, a lot of those areas we can just go through and resurface that road with a double micro surface, different than a double chip seal. It's a type 1 and then followed by a type 2 followed by a type 3 microsurface. So what you're looking at on the screen, that's at the court, the end of the court of Harbor Lane, and there's a before picture, and it's funny, that picture doesn't look nearly as bad as it was from being out there. I'm not a very good photographer. And then we took an after picture of what it looks like now and tried to get kind of in the same relative location. You might remember as we were trying to finish up the project, we got a bunch of rain. We got it on just in time.
Makes it nice and shiny.
Yeah, it made it nice and shiny.
Got it with the car back there, too.
Yeah. So the next picture is, again, it's just looking down Harbor Lane. And what I find fascinating is if you look at this picture down Harbor Lane, again, the pictures actually make it look a lot better than it actually was if you'd been out there. I'm sure Mr. Silva can speak to that. And then the next picture, that's almost the same exact location. Doesn't even look like the same town to me. I thought it was a fascinating picture of how it just
awesome.
cleaned up the area. And then the third picture in Harbor Lane, there was a manhole that was about 4 inches above the surface. It was kind of acting as a speed table, so to speak, Councilman Harris. And unfortunately, we took that speed table away, as you see in the following photo. That's just looking back at Harbor Lane. I had other pictures of before. Yeah, there's a better picture of that manhole. You can see it sticking up pretty high there. And there's a follow-up picture, yeah. So Harbor Lane really was kind of the most impressive to me as far as just like taking on an entirely different look. I had a bunch of pictures of before on Highlands Harbor Drive and the other ones. I felt, and after, but I just felt this kind of gave you enough of a story, an example of the report, and just wanted to check in and make sure you knew what it looked like.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Any comments? Mr. Silva.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to reiterate that we are terrifically pleased, and everybody involved did a great job. If I'm going to have a critique, and I don't want to seem ungrateful, I got to know some of the crew, one of the foremen I was talking to, and towards the end of Highlands Harbor, the last maybe quarter of a mile, there's some irregularities, trench failures maybe, a little deflection in the asphalt. It was a little bit bumpy, and I was talking to one of the foremen, and my immediate thought was, need to pull a leveling course down that last quarter mile before we put the seal on top of it. By the way, I'm very impressed with that. That seal is great, especially the 2 layers. He agreed. He said that we tried to talk city engineer, I don't know if it was you or maybe it was Doug at the time, into doing it, but they didn't want to spend the extra money. That's what I heard. I'm kind of crossing over into the Measure V territory on the Oversight Committee. I don't want you to think I'm ungrateful at all, because I think you guys did a great job. Personally, if I were running the project, if I was in charge of spending the money, I would have spent another $10,000 or $20,000 pulling a leveling course down that last quarter mile before putting the seal on top. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
Did they mention it to you like they said they did? Yeah, that would have been a good deal. What happens, traffic hitting these little dips, tires jump once or twice, doesn't matter, but that happens thousands of times, and after thousands of times, that's how potholes are created. The constant banging of the trucks and the cars going through these dips and bumps. So, at any rate, was there money available? Did you guys spend the 10% that you allocated over, or?
Yes.
You spent it on something, yeah. Yeah, I heard that too. So this is, I think I mentioned, and getting in the Measure V again, we haven't had a meeting, but I asked Mr. Folsom if there was money available to borrow, should the opportunity come up to take advantage of unit prices that are conducive to getting more work done at a cheap price. Most of these contracts are going to involve mobilization. Mobilization is going to be a separate item. It's going to be a big cost. Once they're there, the unit prices will apply. So you don't have to pay another mobilization. You don't have to pay again to set up. You can go right to the unit prices, and if they're good, I would suggest having money available, a credit account that you can access to take advantage of good unit pricing and get some more stuff done. Just for the numbers, though, if you guys get the village done, I guess they're going to go to that next, is what we're going to talk about. But there's about 440 houses between the harbor and the village. I've said this to Russ before. To me, that pencils out to about 3 or 4 people per household, 1,600 people. For less than $2 million, you're going to be making 10% of the residents of the city very happy. So it's money well spent, and the more you can get done, obviously, the better it is for everybody on contract. That's it. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Councilman Harris?
And just a quick question for Mr. Silva. I don't obviously live in that area. Just out of curiosity, I noticed you mentioned the additional foot traffic and all of the other positive notes. Have you noticed any marked improvement in people caring or concerning for their yards and frontage and that sort of thing, repainting, any kind of renovation to vegetation, that sort of thing?
I can definitely speak to the foot traffic. We've always had a lot of people walking around the harbor, older people especially, that didn't walk because they were tripping and falling on the potholes. That's increased a lot, and kids are speeding, though. That's the problem.
That's why those bumps are.
Yeah, I love the dips because The other thing that's happening is people from the village now, instead of trying to take off and go a different direction, they go right to the harbor because it's a nice way out, and they're flying up that road. We've got, if you go and look, you'll see after those little dips that we have, the drainage dips, you'll see scrape marks and pieces of car where people have hit those things, and good enough for them. I think that somebody has spoke to Chief about it can get bad. In regard to fixing up houses, I can tell you personally that I got excited about the road getting done. I've personally put a lot of money into my house this year, painted, roofed, and solar. It invigorated me, I can tell you that. Things like that have a way of spreading. If you see people doing something to their house in a neighborhood, it's like a competition. What are the Jones doing? A lot of them are going to ask questions. They've been asking me questions. Who'd you use for your roofing? Local contractor. Who'd you get for the solar? Who did your painting? I did. But they get excited and they start fixing up their houses. It's a catchy thing. And you guys have started the ball rolling in Highlands Harbor for sure.
And the ground's considerably easier to traverse now.
Pardon?
The roadway is much easier to traverse on foot now.
Oh, absolutely.
So when it comes time for trick-or-treaters, I'd assume there would be a lot larger volumes of candy available this year.
He's already thinking.
Interesting factoid here. I built a house 40 years ago. We've been there for 40 years, including what's gone on with the roads. When the county had it, I bought it in the 70s. Trick-or-treaters, our highest count was 330. It varies depending on the weather and whether or not the police block off the ends of the roads. Some people don't want to walk it, but we get lots of kids, and it'll be a lot safer for them. I enjoy especially the little ones.
Bring us some feedback. If you see a marked increase in trick-or-treaters in your neck of the woods, let's know about that.
I hope so. I love the little ones.
I hope so, too. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
We have one of the bigger ones over here to the left that'd probably be down there. Mr. Schwartz, thank you for your update. I don't think we requires any action on our part. So moving on to item 9, amendment of award of construction contract for the Meadowbrook Area Pavement Rehabilitation Project. Mr. Flora.
Yeah, so we had a special meeting last week where your council awarded the base bid and bid alternate 1. I was out of town last week, so I wasn't there, but as I understand, there was significant interest from the council in trying to award the entire project. So I wanted to bring it back and have a discussion with the council about that. This project was not something that was initially budgeted in the 18-19 budget, but it was something that was brought forward. I'm not exactly sure how it all came about as being an important project. And so we were able to add that in later on. But, we've had some issues with our sales tax projections, as you know, and those are coming in a little less than what we had anticipated. So I believe that it makes a lot of sense to do the complete project, sort of like Mr. Silva was talking about when you have that mobilization cost there and you're doing a larger area. It makes sense. The project is never going to be cheaper than it is today. But it took, it's going to take using the bulk of the Measure V fund balance as well as fund balance from our gas tax fund to be able to fund the project. And initially, I was a little bit concerned about whether we could take even this initial step or additional step of adding the $150,000 or so because change orders are always a concern and that type of thing. I'm hopeful that there may be some ways that we could shift things around and cover that cost, but I just want to make sure that if the council wants to move forward with this, we may be in a situation where one of the projects that has been budgeted in fiscal year 1920, which have been Pearl, Gulf, Alveda, Mullen, and Howard currently. We could have to end up dropping one of those projects in the next construction season in order to do this one now. So, I think it makes a lot of sense to take that route. I just want to make sure that the council is aware, because this was, the 5-year plan that you had approved and put together. There could be that potential. We'll, of course, do everything we can to make sure that we're able to complete all the projects. But there are a limited number of resources available to do it. So with that, I try to address any questions you have.
Open it up for the public for questions first, and surprise, surprise, Mr. Silva.
Thank you. What roads are included in this project? I'm ignorant, I haven't looked at the plans, I don't know anything about it.
The base bid was Meadowbrook, the base bid is Meadowbrook Drive, starting and ending on Lakeview, so that's
Right.
the base bid. And the bid additive alternate one was Stony Brook, which is the more interior street, which intersects Meadowbrook Drive and terminates at Woodside Drive. And then the base bid alternate two was Woodside Drive.
Okay, so Ridgeview isn't included in this? There's a pothole on Ridgeview that about swallowed my wife's car the other day. It's about that deep. It's bad. Again, I'm going to go back to this, having a revolving credit account where you can take advantage of pricing, especially good unit pricing, and you know the difference. I know Doug knew the difference. When you get good unit pricing, you take advantage of it and utilize it and save the mobilization costs. So my opinion, get as much done as you can while you can. If you're going to borrow $1 million, you've got a 20-year horizon here, and if you look at it from the point of view that you're making 10% of the population happy by doing this, if you could do that every year, make 10% of the population happy by doing their roads, you'd be done in 10 years and still have 10 years worth of Measure V coming in. So my choice, my advice, if you want it, is get as much as you can when you can. If you have to borrow $500,000 or $1 million, you're going to save it in the construction costs. You're going to save it in mobilization costs. It's just money in the bank as far as I'm concerned, providing the unit numbers are good. Do you have an evaluation committee to look at these numbers and understand where they should be and where they are? And then get them. Most bids are going to have different categories, different values on different items on a contract. Sometimes money's shifted around in order, for all kinds of reasons, contractors do that. And sometimes they'll lighten up an area that you have a use for somewhere else. Take advantage of those uses and take advantage of that money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Ms. Ullman?
Cheryl Allman, it does get complicated, and I guess my concern is that I know some of the projects that are behind this one, and I know this one is bad. I've heard from people that it is, and I haven't been out there recently to see that, but I did walk down through back roads going to Austin, and sometimes I would be 2 feet the step to get across the road, theoretically. That there's been so much damage to our roads this last winter that when I look at secondary roads, especially something like Mullen or feeder roads where we want those real residential roads to come in, when they're getting that bad, I'm very concerned about dropping things. So, especially if we can get some additional matching monies for some of these collector roads, as well as I don't mind borrowing against it, but there's always a risk of what we're looking at. But as we go forward, I think that as our property values go up and we become a more attractive and vibrant community, we continue to get that. Plus, we should be getting more money as you now get taxes for anybody doing online buying, which since I've been here for 20 years, we did catalog our online buying because there's not a lot of commercial things available within our county. So, I'm hoping that will start to increase. But I'm just concerned if you put all your money into new things, there's always going to be things. There's always going to be something more. And I just wanting to be careful that, it doesn't just always get that bloom going. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ullman. Another question? Ms. Duke?
So this is televised, is that correct? Can they see that when it's shown, the pictures and stuff? Because I was wondering, when we have projects like this, I don't have the map of what roads are being addressed at this time. And for the public, me, whoever, to see what we're talking about, what part of the town we're talking about, what's going to be improved at this moment would be very helpful. Okay, because I know everyone up here is usually supplied with information that we don't have in the, what's out there, plus it's not up there. And that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Duke. Did you have a comment?
No, I was just going to say, apologize for that. We did include it as part of the agenda packet last time, the
Right.
map, but we didn't include it this time, so we'll be more careful.
Are there any other public comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. I think Council Member Harris was slightly beat you.
So, yeah, just a quick question for you about this. We're sitting here kind of discussing a few minutes ago the chip and seal concept. And I know chip and seal can be used as a road surface over the top of an asphalted roadway. I'm just wondering, when we have something like the Riverview Way, right, the connector between the village and the Highlands Harbor, which is not included in this, right? We also have Meadowbrook Court, which is a small area, which is not included in this. And then we're looking at potentially not having, Woodside Drive?
Woodside
That's what
Drive
we're
is bid
considering
alternate
tonight.
2, so that's
Bid
what
alternate
we're
2, yeah, if we didn't have
adding
bid
in,
alternate
yeah.
2. I guess what I'm wondering is, if we looked at the concept of not doing those at all, those 3 roads, because even though we're looking at bid alternate 2 as Woodside Drive, I would also think it would behoove us to include Riverview and this little Meadowbrook Court, which was excluded as far as I remember. Why wouldn't we, knowing what our cost per mile is for chip and seal, for example, why wouldn't we consider that at least as an option for those road services, if not comparable to bid alternate 2? I have a feeling it would be, we could accomplish all 3 of those roadways for a fraction of bid alternate 2 if we just did a chip and seal. And at least it's a road surface. It's a much more stable road surface. Whereas if we're looking at the idea of having all the other projects we have in our horizon, which goes out 4 or 5 years, we don't have these roadways at all in our horizon. I'm just wondering, would it be beneficial for us to go ahead and just figure those roadways as a chip and seal solution so that we can buy ourselves 6 years, and then when we come back around and we look at the idea of doing those, we can go over those with a slurry or the micro seal. I don't know. I'm just kind of looking for feedback from you.
That's actually a really great idea. And we, during the design phase of this, with the consultant Gene and I, were looking for, knowing that budgets are going to be tight, we looked at as many alternatives as we felt would be structurally sound for that area. The problem with a chip and seal or a micropave or a cape seal, there's 3 different kinds of things you could use there, is that these streets are degraded beyond what that would be able to hold. If you're going to chip seal a gravel road, that's one thing. But if you're going to chip seal a paved surface, it's got to be at a certain level, what we call a pavement condition index, or just a certain level of alligator crack in there where the chip and seal can hold. And we just don't think that would be money well spent, because we don't think it would hold in this case. And that's why we went with the grind and the pave on this. In fact, just to expand upon, your idea there, because I think we're thinking the same, is initially what was proposed here was 4 inches thick asphalt concrete. And I'm kind of a hands-on guy, my farming background, so I grabbed my auger that I dig perk holes with, and we went out there. No, actually I didn't. I asked Mike to dig some backhoe holes. That's what I did. I take that back. That was a different project. And we collected base samples. And we kind of have a little makeshift laboratory we run in our office, kind of for our own personal use, for our own design. And we're able to reduce the pavement section just based on what's going on underneath the gravel there. And so we've actually reduced the section. Had we not done that, probably bid alternate 1 and 2 wouldn't have even been in the running, and it's likely that Meadowbrook would have been probably even close to being over budget, and we wouldn't have had this conversation. We're thinking along those lines. We're thinking the same, you and I. I just think that chip and seal here probably wouldn't have held.
Yeah, I'm just really trying to find a way in my mind to not put this out, because my feeling is that if we don't move forward with it as bid alternate 2, then it's going to be 5, 6+ years before we come back around and address those particular areas. I mean, that's kind of what it feels like to me based off of our existing schedule, unless we're able to manipulate those numbers and push in a couple extra spots here and there. So, and then I know this is really, really stretching the bank now, but I just firmly feel that if we're going to go with bid alternate 2, I think we should also seriously consider Riverview and Meadowbrook Court, because they're very small. I mean, they're not tiny, but they're very small comparatively, and that would complete that area, and then that whole entire area is rehabilitated. So instead of just missing one or two little spots.
Just those Riverview.
Just something to throw out there. So thank you.
Yeah, we just add though, unfortunately, those 2 little pieces weren't part of the bid package, so there isn't really a way to add those in at this point, but.
I'm just talking about putting them in
Yeah, in the plan, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And if I understood, this project is stretched financially as far as you can stretch it, hopefully not impacting next year's projects.
That's my hope, but that was the reason initially we recommended only awarding
Right.
bid alternate 1, because, just concerned about stretching it too far.
People need to shop local.
Vice Mayor Slotin, I think you were next.
Yes, just how much was the, any above budget on the previous project? Was there a percentage that makes us feel a little bit better about this one, adding alternate 2 in this?
Which project?
The previous project that you just finished.
Highlands Harbor.
We have not gone over 10%, basically because I fear coming before this council going over that so much.
That's
We've
good.
not
Thank
gone
you.
over 10%.
Thank you. So, I mean,
I would tell you, just so the council knows, that there have been, it's been difficult to make that happen on several of these projects, but Mr. Schwartz and I have talked about it, and we feel like that if I had the authority to go to 15%, that we would always be bumping up against 15%. At some point, we need to draw the line. And, there's some things that probably don't get done the way it would be ideal always, but that's the approach we're taking, because, at some point you have to draw the line, you have to stop.
I like the idea that we're adding alternate 2. I think it's a significant piece in there, and we could always add more and more, but I think if we stretch it and get this done, we probably are going to have the same results of the people that live in that area as we have now with the Harbor Drive area, so I'm all for it.
Councilwoman Overton.
I just really want to make sure that I know we're stretching this, but are you sure we're not stretching it too much? I mean, I'm just getting kind of a little nervous to
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we can't come up with savings, some of this, I'm projecting savings from last fiscal year that we're going to have in that budget. And so, that year isn't closed out yet. So, over the next 60 days, we'll know exactly what that number is. And, you know, I think there's certainly the potential that we'll have the savings to be able to cover all of it. But if that doesn't happen, it just means some of the funding that we have set aside for those 5 projects in next season, Pearl, Gulf, Alveda, Mullen, and Howard, one of them may get dropped off. You know, it's not like we're gonna not have enough money. It's just we may not be able to do the whole plan.
Just another project may end up suffering, but we are in the area, so I mean, it's going to be cheaper now to do it than it's going to be later, so, okay. Well, then I think we should just move forward with this.
Mr. Flora, the alternate to Woodside was in our 5-year plan. Where was it? Was it in there at this period of time?
Yes, it just wasn't initially in the adopted budget in 18-19 when it was done.
But it was in that,
Right.
in that 5-year plan, so it's where it's supposed to be. You know, if we had to move one of the others back one more year, and hopefully we won't, but again, it works. I'm also in agreement that we're out there, it makes sense to do it now and get it done. So I would certainly be in favor of it. Are there any other questions? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we include bid alternate number 2 for a total cost of $1,175,131.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Slotin and a second by Councilman Purdock.
May I ask if you're going to add the 10% for the additional unforeseen contracts amendments authorizing the city manager?
Thank you for clarifying
Yeah,
that.
that's a great catch.
Thank you.
You want to restate your motion?
Yes. I amended to include the 10% of additional unforeseen contract amendments
And
authorize the city manager to approve those.
and we'll do our best not to use that 10%.
Should be better this time around, you know.
There's a motion's been made by Vice Mayor Slotin and seconded by Councilmember Purdock. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right. We're to the end of the numbers. Have a good evening, gentlemen.
So he
Be
doesn't
back.
have his laptop, he's leaving it?
Oh, remember those are on the
Okay, we'll move
oversight
on to city manager
Those
report.
2 are on the oversight.
Yes, Mayor Kramer, I have a pretty short report tonight. We talked a little bit about sales tax. We met with our sales tax consultant yesterday. You should have a sales tax brief in your box, or you grabbed it, that's great, over the last quarter. So take a look at that. If you have any additional questions, feel free to talk to me or Finance Director Martin. The snapshot is growth here in Lake County and including the city of Clearlake is very slight in sales tax. There have been a number of retractions, most significantly in retail sales and auto sales, which is one of the things, as we've talked a number of times, that really impacts our transaction use taxes, which are Measure B and Measure P. Fortunately, those have been propped up by some new businesses, Big Five, and this last quarter was the first one where we saw receipts from Tractor Supply. They didn't report initially the quarter before, but and the placement of all those is confidential data, but I can tell you Tractor Supply in particular has moved well towards the top of sales tax producers in the city. And then the other one that really has had an impact, new business, has been Clearlake Growth Fund, which is the delivery-only cannabis dispensary out of Ogulin Canyon. It's moved into the top 10 in our sales tax producers, and that's excluding the development fee that they've been paying the city. So the other thing that I wanted to share a little bit about is a couple of the council members had requested an update on the airport property project. On April 11th, the council authorized me to enter into a letter of intent with some developers for that property to give them exclusive rights to negotiate over the next 6 months and identify interest in that property. So just this afternoon, I did receive an update from them. And there's still some hesitancy for public release of the specific businesses that they are targeting, but they do plan to target a number of businesses that had been targeted the first time around. They are negotiating with the previous developer to get all of their work product to help them move forward. And they are negotiating, or they have shared information with a number of those previous targets. And this is what they're calling the Pierce Landing Project. You know, obviously named after the former Pierce Field. And so they're also looking at, you know that they've been looking at some home improvement stores. They have, I believe, made contact with some regional players as a backup option if the larger national chains don't show interest. So I guess the key thing, you know, we're halfway through the 6-month process at this point. And they are sharing that they are optimistic that in late August, early September, there'll be potential site visits with some of those retailers. They are also recommending that the city begin the process to construct road improvements connecting 18th Avenue to Old Highway 53, and they feel like this adds credibility to the project. Although the reason the city has held off on that, obviously, is not wanting to, you know, put a design in that could impact how that parcel is developed. And so, you know, I think staff's recommendation at least would be to continue to hold off on that until there's some more clarity on what that project looks like. But if there's some way that we can, you know, continue to show the city's commitment to completing that project at some point in time, I'm sure the council will be interested in considering that. So I have a little list here of some other retailers, a lot of restaurants, and some retailers that they're planning on contacting, but they asked that that not be shared publicly at this time. So I guess if you would like to have a little insight into that, you can see me privately at some point later. And unless there's any questions, Chief White would like to give the council a little bit of a report on police department activities in the last couple of weeks.
Thank you. I just want to give you a brief update. Looking at crime numbers, obviously one of our goals is to make Clearlake a statistically safer city. So we just ran numbers for first half of the year. So January to June of this year compared to January to June of last year, Part 1 crime, which is violent crime and property crime, is down 14%. We have a slight increase in calls for service of 5% year over year, 127% increase in citations, and a 38% increase in traffic stops, a 3% reduction in arrests, which likely corresponds with the overall reduction in violent crime. So continuing to see good progress. It did slow down a little bit. The crime reduction in the first quarter of this year was actually down a little bit more, but as we went into the summer, obviously we see more activity, so that kind of follows the standard trends. And that's all I have.
Okay. Moving on. Councilmember Purdock.
We have nothing to report. I had a very enjoyable 4th. The parade was awesome. Glad for everybody who came out and hope they had an enjoyable time as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Nothing notable to report, thank you.
Councilmember Overton.
I have a few thank yous. Bruno's not here. I wanted to thank him. He's been helping us up. He's right. He's been one of the a great supervisor to help me get things done at the county that I wasn't able to get done before. So I really appreciate his help. Too bad he's not in here to hear that, right? Also got a call from our Assemblywoman Cecilia Ogren Curry, and happy to announce that we'll be getting $70,000 for the city to help do some work there at the community building. So anxious to see if we can match that with some other money to get something really done there. So that was really nice that when she, during one of her visits up here, her and I walked around, and I just kind of mentioned, when she did the eye clinic, you know, we just kind of walked around the building and told her some of the things that, you know, would be nice if it was there, and she actually went to the state and she put it into a proposal in the budget, and they approved it, so she got word today, so she called me, so you guys, so I'm kind of excited about it, that, you know, we got money there for the community center. What we need to do with it and how she put it in, she didn't give me any descriptions, but it was, the talk was from her assistant was more for like kitchen stuff is what I got for what it was, so.
All kinds of grants.
Yeah, I know, well, it's all for the community, so unfortunately, it's not for what I would like, but it's great for the community. I mean, I want to see that building, you know, that's been something I've been wanting to see really completed since they started it, so I'm kind of anxious, and I'm kind of excited that I'm actually there to help make that happen. So also want to thank Phil for helping there by his property. He helped do some little decoration for us. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. And that's really it. Thank you.
I saw him on a
Awesome 4th of
backhoe
July.
this morning.
Yeah, it's been spending a lot of time on that tractor.
Yeah.
Yeah, fun, huh?
I like that little one. Little one now.
He's helping make Lakeshore Drive better. We're trying to work together. He's helping us out a lot there, so we appreciate him.
Vice Mayor Slotin?
I have really nothing to report at this point.
The only thing I have, again, is I spent some time with Mr. Schwartz last week out on our project at the community center to get the shower trailer project completed, along with some repouring of concrete sidewalks for the community center. So I appreciate your help on that, and we'll continue to get you that information so we can get it going. That's all I had to report. So, future agenda items. Anything, Mr. Flora? Councilman, members? Okay, seeing none, we'll adjourn to closed session at 7:36, excuse me.